Hello everyone, welcome to our channel. Today's topic, the effect of the Norman Conquest on English literature. The effects of the Norman Conquest on English literature were multi-leveled, profound and pervasive, and slowly fruitful. But it thoroughly interrupted the Norman Anglo-Saxon literary development and temporarily forced English prose and poetry in the background. But we cannot say that the influence was merely negative or entirely bad. A.C. Ball comments, the Norman conquerors and those who later came into their train brought with them their continental tastes and the literature on which those tastes had been formed. As a result, the English composition began again with the thorough base of the matter and form of the French works. The French culture infused the spirit of romance to which the Anglo-Saxons were unaccustomed. After the Norman conquest, French literature circulated as freely at the English court as in France. It furnished a large body of new material for English poets and gave them new models and standards for imitation. The juggler, Taillefer, who came with the Normans singing the deeds of Roland, made an unmistakable impact on the Saxons. Lewis has truly observed to pass from Beowulf or even from the Battle of Maldon to the chanson de Roland is coming from gloom into light. This sense of light is everywhere, in subject, in manner, in the spirit, and in the difference in language. The Norman French poets were inspired to discover beauty and romance in anything. In their works, they highlighted the brightness of the moon and the stars, the gentle clarity of the clear dawn, the rising sun, and there was crimson with the clear blood in their eyes. A change of temperament and attitude is noticeable from Anglo-Saxon through Anglo-Norman to Middle English. Love to pleasure, beauty, and refinement, and a growing artistic conscience derived from French literature combined to influence English poetry and reach a culminating stage in Chaucer. The tone of poetry changed remarkably. Wit, humor, and innuendos enlivened the pieces. But the most obvious effect of Norman importation of French influence is the massive introduction of rhyme in poetry. The rhymed verse soon replaced the Anglo-Saxon alliterative tradition. French poetry captivated the Anglo-Saxon to the extent of changing their ear and making necessary the returns at fixed intervals of accents and the echo of similar endings, syllabications, measure, and rhyme. But though different types of rhymes were used extensively in Anglo-Norman poems, from the owl and the nightingale to poema morali, the undercurrent of Old English alteration and rhyme coexisted, and the 14th century revival of alternative verse was in the offing. The far-reaching good effect of the Norman conquest was the flourish of a variety of verse forms. In Middle English, romances, narratives, lyrics, storytelling in verse, chronicles and allegories, homilies and legends. The significant religious verses are poema morali or moral ode, possibly written in about 1170, or mulam, written in about 1200. Cursor Mundi and Prick of Conscience, possibly composed in 1340. The Life of Saint Brendan and the Life of Saint Dunstan were other two popular religious poems. Anthony Rowley was the best example of prose work of the time. All those religious compositions had their inspiration in French religious poetry. Among the secular works, the most remarkable work was of course The Owl and the Nightingale, which was written about 1220. Founded on the symbolic poetry of France, it was an allegory of youth and wisdom. Havelock, The Dance and Kinghorn were two popular romances of the time. Other secular works were The Love Song of Alison, Spring, and The Song of Husbandman. All those English works, both religious and secular, received inspiration from French literature. The effect of the conquest was not an unmixed blessing for English literature. While poetry developed and the prospect of drama opened up, prose suffered neglect. In fact, English prose owed nothing to French, besides being benefited by naturalization and numerous French works, the English language attained further dynamism. Also, the learning and scholarship flourished through natural crises, changes of monarchs, and the Crusades. Lewis asserts no knowledge of Anglo-Saxon poetry is needed in order to read Chaucer, but it is impossible to understand the origin of his work without knowing something of the French poetry which preceded it. Thus, to conclude with A.C. Beau, it was the leading literature of Europe, rich and varied in theme, polite and urban in spirit, easy and confident in performance.